Good morning, everyone, and welcome into a special edition of the Dickson Sports Report. And I say special edition because we've gotten a lot of calls, messages, text last night and this morning asking, hey, Justin, what about Creekwood football? Are they going to make the playoffs? What are the scenarios? What games need to be won? Who needs to lose in order for Creekwood to get in? And so last night during the broadcast, if you guys were listening, Creekwood, we traveled to Greenbrier, Tennessee, and Greenbrier High School. Creekwood got the victory last night by a score of 33-0. And as we were going off of the air, I told everybody, we'll come back, we'll tell you about the scenarios for the playoffs. We're really not sure, as far as the other games last night, who had won, who had lost. But now that we've had enough time to sort of break things down, I wanted to go live here on Facebook and talk to you guys a little bit about playoff scenarios. First off, last night was a great game. If you missed it, let me give you a quick recap. As I've already mentioned, Creekwood did get the victory last night over Greenbrier. Final score was 33-0, and that brought Creekwood's record to 6-3 on the season, 3-3 in the region. Just a quick rundown of the games so far. We played 9 games. We've got 1 game to go. Dickson County, of course, went to Dickson. First game of the season, defeated Dickson County High School by a score of 28-14. The following week, Lewis County came to Creekwood, and that was another victory for the Red Hawks, 17-6. So started off the season 2-0, going into that game with Pearl Cone. Of course, Pearl Cone was the state champion last year, undefeated. This year, highly ranked. Coming into the game, one of the top teams in the state. Creekwood did fall in that game by a score of 41-7, and after 3 games, the record was 2-1. Then Montgomery Central traveled to Creekwood, won that game 27-7. The following week, we went to Whites Creek, and that was a W for the Red Hawks, 42-14. And so at that point, the Red Hawks were 4-1. And then Fairview came to town. That was a victory for your Red Hawks, 23-0. Then the following week, Marshall County came to town. That was a loss, unfortunately, 35-13. And then last week, after the break for spring break, after the bye week, Station Camp came to town, and that was a close game, highly contested. Creekwood did end up with a loss, 14-7. And so as we go into the game last night, overall record 5-3, but in region, just 2-3. So last night was a really big game for Creekwood, really big region game with a lot of playoff implications. In the first quarter, the Creekwood Red Hawks went up early in the game, score of 7-0 after a 16-yard touchdown run from Xavier Knight. In the second quarter, Creekwood got another touchdown. This time it was Ben Singleton to Keon Robertson. 35-yard touchdown pass on third down brought the score to 14-0. At halftime, it was 14-0. As we come into the third quarter, Creekwood would score several more times. It was a pass from Ben Singleton to DeModest Henderson that got the Creekwood Red Hawks up 21-0, and then a couple more touchdown runs for Xavier Knight brought the final score to 33-0 due to the fact that 2 extra points were missed. One was a bad snap. One, I believe, the Greenbrier player got his hand on it, sort of redirected that one. And so, again, the final score, 33-0. And so now we look forward to next week. Creekwood has one more game. We're going to travel to White House. That will be on Halloween night. That will be Thursday, October the 31st. Let's go ahead now and take a look. If you look at the screen with me, I've made a few graphics here. Take a look at 4A football, Region 5, and these are the teams still in the playoff hunt. You've got Pearl Cone sitting at the top of the region, right next to Marshall County, who's also sitting right there at the top. Both of those teams are 6-0 in the region. Just under them is Station Camp at 4-2. Who is pretty much locked into that 3 spot. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And then at number 4, we've got a tie right now between Creekwood and White House. Both teams 3-3 in the region. And it just so happens that these two teams are going to play again next week. Are going to play for the final game of the season next week, I should say. So the top 4 teams of the region get into the playoffs. And as you can see from the screen here, Pearl-Cohn and Marshall County are going to get those top 2 spots. Now it's a question of which one is going to get the number 1 spot, which one is going to get the number 2. But it's safe to say those 2 teams are in the playoffs and they're going to get the top 2 spots. Station Camp is pretty much locked in at number 3. Station Camp is going to play Whites Creek this next week. Whites Creek is 1-5 in the region. Station Camp is 4-2. All Station Camp has to do is win. Pretty much locked into that number 3 spot. Even if they don't win, I believe they're probably locked into that number 3 spot. And then it really all comes down to Creekwood and White House. Only one team can get into that 4 spot. Both have identical records, and they're playing next week. So essentially, next week is an elimination game. It's a opening round playoff game, if you will. It has a lot of implications because the winner is going to keep playing football, and the loser, it appears, will be left on the outside looking in. So as we look forward to next week's games, we do have Pearl-Cohn traveling to Marshall County. This is week 11. This is the 10th game of the season for everybody, and it will be the 7th region game. So Pearl-Cohn, Marshall County, whoever wins that game is going to have 7 wins. They will take the top spot. Loser gets the number 2 spot. As I mentioned earlier, Station Camp's pretty much locked in at the number 3 spot. Station Camp goes to Whites Creek. As I mentioned before, Station Camp has the better record. They're 4-2. Whites Creek is 1-5. If predictions hold up and if the stats are correct, you would think Station Camp would get the win. It's possible they don't. But if they do, they're definitely in at the number 3 spot. If they were to happen to lose, their record in the region would be 4-3, so they essentially could tie with White House or Creekwood if one of those 2 teams were to win and also have the 4-3 record. But Station Camp has the tiebreaker over both teams. So essentially, Station Camp is going to be the 3 seed. So again, it all comes down to Creekwood 3-3 at White House 3-3. Whichever team wins that game will make it to the playoffs. And that's just the simple way of putting it. Montgomery Central, Whites Creek, and Greenbrier, they're going to find themselves outside of the playoffs looking in. Just not enough wins for them to be involved in the conversation here. So these teams on the screen here, these are the 3 games that we're going to be watching this coming week to see if Creekwood's going to make it into the playoffs. And it's pretty much Creekwood has destiny in their hands. So they will decide their own fate. If they win the game, they're in. If they don't, it looks like White House will make it. So that's your playoff scenarios for Creekwood. Now, there's a lot of folks also texting me asking about Dickson County. It's far more complicated for them to get in. I will try to make a video with that if we can sort of piece that together and figure it out. But for Creekwood, it's pretty cut and dry. If Creekwood wins, they are in. If they don't, they are not. Thank you for listening to a special edition of the Dickson Sports Report, high school football playoff scenarios. Thanks for tuning in every week to Creekwood football. We'll be back this week, Thursday night, October 31st. We're traveling to White House for essentially the opening round of the playoffs. If Creekwood is in, or if Creekwood wins, they are in. Thanks for listening.